Hey everyone, it's Raphael from XX Raphael Productions, and this is my second video about the Eternals movie, and since I'm aware it's still quite new, here is the warning for any spoiler alerts if you have not yet seen the movie. So this is going to be a follow-up to my previous video where I reviewed the Eternals a couple days ago, which I will link in the description below. But to summarize it up, I did explain that my final thoughts were that the actual movie was quite average, and it definitely had its problems, although to the movie's credit, I will also say that it is nowhere near as bad as how the critics were absolutely destroying this movie. So I do think that it deserves a higher rating than the Black Widow movie, for example, but either way, this movie was definitely not Marvel's best movie, but I will say it is certainly not the worst. So this video will be a lot shorter than my other one, so let's get right to the topic. So some of the big problems is that how it tried to do too much in the span of one movie. Now, I'm thinking of an example to use, and I think the first Avengers movie back in 2012 would be a great one. So I want you to think back to the first Avengers movie back in 2012 where we had a lot of characters all in one movie. So this worked pretty well because prior to the first Avengers, which concluded phase 1 of the MCU, we had Iron Man 1, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor 1, and Captain America's first movie, all introducing these characters, their history, their personalities, which all culminated in one crossover movie. So basically with all these characters being all introduced prior to the crossover movie, like the Avengers 2012, it had a good balance with moving the plot forward. So there were some characters like Black Widow or Hawkeye who didn't have their own solo movie. Well, as for Black Widow, she didn't have her own solo movie until 2021, but at the time in 2012, some characters like those two, they didn't have their own solo movies, so they were emphasized more in the first Avengers movie, or even prior to that, like in Black Widow's case in Iron Man 2. So it didn't really spend too much time introducing all the characters at once, unlike the Eternals, where it suffered the burden of introducing so many new characters all at once with no prior build-up to this team. So essentially, the Eternals movie was introducing so many characters at once while trying to balance the time with the main plot. So that is something that the Avengers movie was able to do by having pre-established movies before the big event, alright? So I do want to emphasize that when I'm referring to the pacing of this movie, I'm referring to specifically around the first half having the most problems, because the second half of this movie is definitely much better when the plot actually picks up. Despite the movie's best efforts, it still unfortunately didn't work out too well, even with the slower pace. So basically not too many of the actual characters felt particularly fleshed out or too interesting. So when it came to the romance between the main protagonist and Richard Madden's character, I'm referring to the Superman-like Eternal, along with the latter seemingly killing himself by flying to the sun, it failed to make me feel anything more than a whatever. Now, the best way I can put this feeling is that they had this weird middle problem where they couldn't spend too much time in the background of these characters, as that would make the movie too long and boring, but they also didn't have enough time for most of the audience to invest too much in the new characters. Now, this is unlike the Avengers, which had a better build-up before the 2012 movie. That is honestly the big problem with the Eternals, is that they were very ambitious with this movie, and there were some good moments, but ultimately I did feel that this movie could have been so much more than what they were able to present to us. Now, as for the rest of the movie, the visuals and the special effects are quite a mixed bag. There are definitely some beautiful shots in this movie, that's undeniable, but occasionally there are also some laughable CGI here and there. But it didn't really bother me too much compared to the main plot, so I'm not gonna count it as a major flaw of the movie. So yeah, I specifically made this video just to magnify more on the flaws of the Eternals movie, so if you want the full review, where I fully list all the positives and the negatives, it is in the description below. But yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the Spider-Man No Way Home review, which will come this December. Raphael out, and I will see you soon.